Hello, Year 13s. I wanted to take a moment to talk to you about something called the Tolpuddle Martyrs, which seems very historical, but I think for many people this is kind of where it began in the UK. And later this lesson you'll see an interview I have with my cousin, and he kind of raised this with me as something really significant for him to do with why he joined something called a union. And you'll see down here there's a festival that happens every year called the Tolpuddle Martyrs Festival, where people come together to remember what these guys did and why it's so important. So take your mind back to 1834 and imagine what the working conditions were like nearly 200 years ago for farm workers without land, living in very rural areas a long time, 200 years ago. So the Tolpuddle Martyrs were 6 men who lived in Tolpuddle, a little village in Dorset you've seen a picture of, who were working on the farm as labourers who felt like they weren't free and they were basically shackled, which is why that image is up there, to working for very little pay without much say in their conditions. And they were actually getting, I think, 6 or 7 shillings a week, which works out as about 30p in today's money per week. And they had very harsh conditions. So they decided to meet to talk about what could they do together to raise this as an issue with their employers and see what better rights they could get or better payment that they could get, a better share of the work, that they were doing. And they took an oath together when they're under the tree, an oath to secrecy, an agreement that they would work together and be together as a collective. And it's the beginning of the trade union movement, basically people saying together as the workers, we're going to unite and think of how we can together, rather than just individually, raise concerns. Now, this oath was something that then got them arrested. That was seen as illegal and against the law, where really it was used as a law against them because at the time employers and I guess the government didn't really want to have unions rising and having this idea. Remember, this is nearly 200 years ago and things were happening in the rest of the world. There'd been the French Revolution, things were happening. And so they were actually arrested and convicted, not to death, but they were sent to Australia by boat. And many people did die on this. So they were sent to go and work in the penal colonies that were called in Australia. So it was like a death sentence, really. And when this message got out to people who were working class and workers around England, when the message got out, remember this is nearly 200 years ago, people were really cross that this had happened. I guess this is why they're called martyrs, even though they didn't die, because it's like their cause then spread. The actions that happened to them spread the cause so much bigger, so much wider than just them because of what had happened to them, this unfair treatment that they had. And actually, thousands of people marched to London and marched through the streets of London to present a petition of 800,000 signatures. Now imagine that before social media, before the internet and everything, to give to the government. And eventually, after a while, that pressure that got put onto the government and actually caused this to be overturned, and they were no longer seen as criminals and they were allowed to return home. And from then on, they've been a sort of symbol of this struggle and the right that we have to have unions, the rights that we have to have employee rights, which you're going to learn more about in the lesson. And like I say, with the festival, the Tolpuddle Martyrs Festival, where lots of unions will go and people go to talk about the importance of unions. So I wonder if now you can see how that might link to you, or why this is something worth learning about. This is like the history of the union movement in this country and the importance it is to be able to come together and say, look, we as employees have a kind of common concern. It could be a payment, it could be health and safety, it could be the health and safety of the public if you're working with the public. So this is the beginning of the story, and you're going to learn a little bit more about the rest of the story as this lesson goes on.